Guys, what's goody? Welcome to the Bird Brain Podcast, where the goal is to rise above it all, stay elevated, create that infinity, and up your you. I'm your host, Isaiah, and the planets are going crazy. It's a crazy season, crazy time of the year for a myriad of reasons, and there is a lot of things that can come up within ourselves, but also within our relationships. And one of the things that is so important um, as you kind of navigate things in just life is ownership, recognition, and ownership, and also action. It may not be your fault, but it is your responsibility. And we're going to get into that. All right. So buckle up for this one. If you're driving, wear your seatbelt. If you're at home, wear your seatbelt. Get some water. And yeah, we're going to really tackle this because the goal is to come out on the other side a little bit better. All right, so stay tuned. What's up, y'all? How are you? First and foremost, I want to thank everyone who tuned in to the Night Owl short film, and more importantly, the people who donated and contributed. I want to shout out Andrea and Mallory for being two of the people that contributed to the short and showed some love. That really means a lot. And yeah, thank you guys for, again, just showing up and being present in any way possible. It's a big deal, yeah. And I had a good time. It was a blast watching it with people and just really enjoying the process. And like, I think when it's all said and done, I was really proud of myself, but also the people that worked with me. Just proud of myself because it takes a lot to do a lot. Right? It takes a lot to do a lot, and sometimes we do so much that we don't realize just how much we're doing. And I think society kind of does this juggle of everybody's busy, but also what's the other side? Um, what was it? Everyone's busy. You should always be busy. Um, and at the same time, it's like, I don't know. It's weird. Like the whole concept of busyness just is lost on me. So I think, one of the things I've always understood is I'm never too busy for the things that matter. I will never be too busy. And I do my best to make time no matter what I have going on. I don't consider myself a busy person, first of all. All right, it doesn't, busyness means nothing to me. And I've said this so many times because it doesn't mean anything, right? The only person you'll tell that you're busy is the person that you have no interest in that moment or in moments, in the near future. Busyness is kind of it's a thing that makes people feel more important than what they are. Makes them feel like what they're doing and what their life is more important than yours. But also it's a way to kind of deflect. So I try not to use busyness because it's more of an insult than it is something that's like, a thing of interest. It kind of wedges more of a gap in relationships than it does bring people together. Um, Hustle culture, right? Oh yeah, I'm been so busy and I got this going on. It's like, no one really gives a shit because for the most part everybody's busy. But also, you know, I I think when it comes to social media too, like, a lot of people are busy watching your life. Um, and have no interest in investing in it or engaging in it or being a participant in it outside of their own needs. You get what I'm saying? A lot of people are busy trying to be in your life for themselves without trying to actually um, engage in your life for the sake of your growth and your betterment. So, that whole busy word doesn't mean anything to me, but like I said, doing this film was kind of crazy because, I wrote it, got my buddies, we shot it, I edited it, um, did the music for it, and these are things that I just enjoyed doing. These are things that are important to me more than anything. These are things that I like sharing with people who are down to be a part of that. And it's like the people that take time to also celebrate with you, near or far, I think is a big deal too. Because again, you'll have a lot of people surveilling your life, but not too many people that are looking to show up in it. And that has always been a point of realization for me. I'm very observant in those aspects, which is why I always say, not all attention is good attention. And I'm not the type of person that's necessarily flattered by, flattery, because it doesn't always mean much to me if there's no action behind the things that you're saying. It's like you're flattering me to get something from me. You're not showing up to pour into me. And with that being said, something else that came up, when it's like placing blame, right? When we go through these things and we have these relationship pitfalls, or certain shit happens, we get caught up in like, oh man, it was this person's fault, and this person did this, and this is why I can't do this, whatever the case may be. And something I've really worked at making my life is that it's not my fault, but it is my responsibility. So, if, let's use an example, running a business is important, right? Because it's your business. And life in itself is your business, whether we understand that or not. Life operates kind of like a business. You know what I'm saying? You have to be on top of your P's and Q's. And at the end of the day, if someone doesn't show up in life and they were supposed to, or you had the expectation to, or they gave you the expectation, or they volunteered, whatever, and they don't show up, you still have to show up. This is your business. You still have to get these things done. And two things can be true at once. You can be frustrated. You can be upset. You could be angry. You could be sad about it. You can feel like you got, left out there. The feeling of abandonment is not always real, but it can come from history of being abandoned. Absolutely. But when we're adults, something that I've learned is like, you cannot be abandoned as an adult, right? There's no such thing as being abandoned. And, even when I talk about, boundaries and taking a step away, or not being, I posted a video about like not taking so much pride in being the go-to person for everybody, right? Because if people are only coming to you when they need you, and then otherwise you don't hear a thing from them up until they need you again, you shouldn't be proud of that, because what it shows is that you're being used. It shows that beyond this thing of me dumping my problems on you, or me getting money from you, or whatever the case may be, or me, listening to your words of wisdom, you don't really matter to me. So being there only when someone needs you is not something that's noble, right? You're being used, and you're more than that. You are so much more than that. And as always, someone's always like, well, how do we get away from this? Because if I create boundaries, then I'm going to be all alone. Well, the answer is in your statement, because if you're going to be all alone, after establishing boundaries with people who only come to you when they need you, then you don't have relationships at all. So what are you saying? You rather concede to the idea of just having people around, even though you know they use you and they're not really around for you, just for the sake of not having people around, right? You got to ask yourself, what am I choosing? You know, I'm choosing anybody or everybody just to have anybody, and that's not the vibe. And as much as people say, well, yeah, it's so hard and all those things, what's harder? A life of not being valued, or taking a step away and, reevaluating things until you are valued? I'll take the latter. I will always take the latter. Always take the latter. And maybe it's because of my personal experiences and kind of, again, doing things that I need to do and get done. Like even with this film, initially there were so many plans in play and so many other players involved that didn't show up. And I was like, all right, cool. Well, they're not going to show up. I can only wait so long for somebody to decide that I'm a priority. And what I've learned to do is wait a little. I don't wait as long. I don't wait as long, right? Because if you're always waiting for somebody to decide how they're going to treat you, what they value when it comes to their relationship with you, etc., you're going to be waiting for a while. Because again, priorities are organized choices, and people may not have you high on their priority list, right? I can prioritize you when my needs need to be met because I'm prioritizing a resource. I'm prioritizing getting my needs met. So even in that space, you're not a priority.
92% of households that join Peloton early in the year are still active a year later.
Yeah, if you like cycling to EDM.
Not just EDM. Try cycling to Broadway hits, take a scenic hike in Iceland on our treadmill, or row to some 80s jams.
Because I have so much free time.
Whether you have 30 minutes or just 5, Peloton can fit any schedule. 92% stick with it. So can you. Try Peloton tread, row, or bikes risk-free with a 30-day home trial. New members only. Not available in remote locations. See additional terms at onepeloton.com/home-trial.
Priority to me. What you have to offer me is a priority, right? So when these things happen, it's just important to say, you know what? I've been taken advantage of. Okay, I've been taken advantage of. And to some degree, that is not my fault that somebody is the way that they are. It is my responsibility to now recognize it and make uncomfortable choices. And that's where people get caught up. If you're always waiting for somebody else to apologize, then that means that you're putting the responsibility of your feelings and you getting on with life in somebody else's hands. And what does that do? That means that you don't have to work, right? You can just sit back and wait for the other person. And that's what I really, I don't stand in. I don't stand in, because you'll be waiting for the rest of your life for somebody to value you in those ways. You'll be waiting for the rest of your life for somebody to value you in the way that you should value yourself too. You get what I'm saying? No one is ever going to necessarily value you more consistently in all the ways that you need to be valued than you. And waiting and hoping that somebody's going to change for you is kind of a cop-out. Like I said, again, it takes the responsibility off of you. Someone hurt you? That's not your fault. You can't have feelings about it. You can explore those feelings. You can accept, yeah, this sucks. What they did was trash. How they influenced my feelings, that was shitty. I really didn't appreciate that. And that was not my fault. What's my responsibility? Well, I can communicate it if it's necessary to communicate, because I'm not one of those people that says communication is always important in every situation and circumstances, because it's very nuanced. It's not black and white. And truth be told, a lot of people that preach communication are not people that are advocates for accountability. Sometimes it's just talking, and that requires you doing the work, right? You have to come to me and tell me what I did wrong. Why are you not just more aware? And yeah, there may be things that you may be doing that you don't have an idea of in terms of how they affect me. But overall, as adults, it's like we didn't just get here yesterday. You're an adult. That means that you've navigated life in a certain way for quite some time, and it's worked for you. So you know how you move. You know what you're doing, right? You know how you exist in this world. It's not a surprise. And me having that conversation with you is not necessarily going to change anything. Sometimes it will. I'm not saying that, not everybody deserves communication, but you have to pick and choose. And that's why I think patterns are so important to understand about ourselves and other people, right? I know for me, and maybe I went off on a tangent from what I was initially saying, running a business is important that I am always cognizant of what's going on. And I recognize when I start to get kind of derailed or even frustrated. That means, Isaiah, you're not taking care of yourself. You're not establishing boundaries. You're not communicating what you need. You're not staying firm to your boundaries, correct? And because of that, certain things are happening that are affecting you very deeply. And once I recognize that, even if it was what someone did, it was their fault, right? My responsibility, though, is all mine. How do I navigate this? How do I change this from happening again moving forward? Because I don't want this to happen. I don't like being frustrated, right? I don't like being exhausted. I don't like being left in a state of confusion. I don't like being, screwed over. Like, I don't like those feelings. So how can I navigate moving forward to prevent that from happening? You get what I'm saying? There is no relationship in this world that is worth you compromising yourself for. Right? You can have compromises within a relationship, but if it's you compromising yourself in a very unhealthy way, then the relationship is not worth it. Okay? But you have to take ownership. The whole thing, well, it's hard. Yeah, no shit. It's hard. Healing is hard. Standing up for yourself if you're not used to doing it, it's hard. We know that. Like that is kind of it's not in the fine print, it's in bold. It's at the top of the paper as you live life, right? Making uncomfortable decisions. They can be hard, but they are also necessary. And if you fear being alone more than you fear the idea of being in company of people who treat you poorly, then you need to really reorganize your priorities, and you really need to do some deep digging in terms of what you value. And if the sake of your value is just, as long as somebody keeps me around, that's enough for me, we got to change that, because that's not good enough. And look at when people come around and why they have you around, okay? It's so important to be mindful of what it is that we're saying in the dialogue, okay? Not every relationship is worth that. No relationship is worth that, truth be told. And the only way you can recognize that is if you're willing to take responsibility. I say to myself all the time, there are certain things I don't want to feel and or experience again. So I'm not. And if there is even an inkling, like an indication of that pattern arising again, we're not doing it. I may give other people a pass for an extended period of time, longer than I should, but overall, it's coming to a close. I really try to create a sense of peace in my life, because I know that's the only way I can show up effectively for other people, right? And if I do have chaotic seasons in my life, who's responsible for this right now? Right? Who's at fault, but also who's responsible? Because yes, sometimes the way people exist in life can be a hindrance on others. We are not void of experiences with other people. So the whole not taking things personal, again, to some degree, that's very dismissive, right? We have feelings for a reason. We have a relationship for a reason. We are always interacting with each other, okay? And how we feel and how our feelings are influenced by others is so necessary to recognize and understand. But more than anything, the most important thing to recognize is when you are frustrated, when you do have things going on, when people don't show up, what now? All right, they didn't show up. So now what? Does that mean that these things don't get done? Or does that mean you ask for help elsewhere? Or does that mean you now get in the driver's seat and you do what needs to be done to get your shit done for you? And yeah, I know it's frustrating. It's not always the ideal situation, but I'll tell you what, if you could take a look at how much you've been through on your own, how much you had to take care of on your own, the need for a lot of people that are in your life probably isn't necessary because they don't offer much. They don't show up with much. Okay? So with that being said, is like I don't need you. And that's because you have not made it a point to be a person that I could rely on. So I don't need you. We're good. You know? We're good. And sometimes people get upset about that they're not needed. Well, you were okay with being a person that couldn't be dependent on. So what do you want from me? You know? What do you want from me? You can't have things your way, okay? Not in someone else's life, at least. But yeah, we have to get better at taking ownership. If some things happen, yes, all right, how can I do better next time? Now that I know better, I do better, right? There's certain partnerships I don't allow anymore because I already experienced this. You know, even with clients, truth be told, is like if there's a level of inconsistency, it's like, all right, cool. I understand that this is not healthy for me either. If it's not healthy for me, then that's not good for me because I still have to continue my work and I have to be effective, not just for myself, but especially for myself and other people who are also willing to show up and do the work diligently, right? Because sometimes one experience or one interaction with one person can influence a lot of other components in your life. Okay, so just be mindful of what you're saying is someone else's fault, but don't necessarily always make it their responsibility to fix. Get in the driver's seat and stop waiting for other people to be somebody different than who they are and who they've shown you. Okay? And that's all I got. That's all I got. You know, just taking ownership, it really changes things because you could be frustrated in motion. You can handle your shit while understanding that whatever happened to you was kind of fucked up. Two things can exist at the same time, but stop waiting for other people to rescue you. Okay? Stop putting the blame on other people because it prevents you from having to do the work. Right? That's why the whole concept sometimes of like, oh yeah, giving it to God or whatever you believe in, God provides resources for a reason. So it's like you can still do this work on your own. Okay? And recognize your goal or your obligation is not to be there for everyone, and they are there for themselves. All right, so with that being said, you guys have a great week. I missed Patreon this week. Your boy's been crazy busy and traveling, but we're back on the grind. And yes, I will be hitting you guys up with some goodies. Thank you for the Patreon supporters as well. And like I said, if you guys showed up on Halloween and you guys have watched a short film, thank you. I really appreciate it. And if you guys contributed and donated, appreciate that too. I always appreciate the love and support that you guys show. All right. So with that being said, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and take flight.